Hello, and welcome to the most mediocre podcast on the planet. I'm Chris, and this is Average Joe. Let's talk about it. Welcome to a place where you can feel comfortable having those uncomfortable conversations and say the things out loud that we normally don't talk about. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's talk about it. I want to talk today about the business of business. And what I mean is, I've got a side hustle, and it runs concurrent with my full-time job. It's quite a bit of work, and at times I'm not even sure if I want to continue to push ahead because I seem to be getting zero traction. I get more traffic on a bad weather day out selling in a farmer's market than I do in a great day online. I am constantly posting, creating content, messing with ChatGPT, asking for advice, getting recommendations, implementing them. And most of the time that I'm doing what I'm doing, and let me rephrase that. I spend more time on the computer and on the phone doing the marketing and the content creation and the uploading new product because it doesn't seem like the product that I have on there is satisfactory enough to gain traction. So I currently have almost 90 different types of t-shirts on my Shopify store, and every one of them is different, and they're not bad. And the more that I make them, or at least the more that I design them, the better the designs get, at least I think. And what I'm getting at is that there comes a time where you might be running a business or starting a side hustle or just trying to test the waters and do something different than the everyday, and you're in comparison mode and you're out there and you're looking and seeing what everybody else is doing and you're trying to emulate that, and you're getting recommendations and advice from creators and influencers, and every single one of them says something different, almost to the point of nauseam, to where you just don't want to hear it anymore. I don't even use social media in the normal way that most people use social media, at least the majority of the population. I'm not out there trying to get likes about my everyday life and my family and my personal affairs. I don't put much effort into, going on trips and taking pictures and going out of my way to post them and create funny and fancy content for myself personally as an individual. What I do is I am constantly creating new products and different styles of products, and it doesn't seem to be making much of a difference. I haven't even added it up, but I'm spending quite a bit of money every single month for resources and peripherals and all these other things that are supposed to help me, and nothing seems to be working. So I told myself at the beginning of the year, and I've even spoken the words out loud, that if I continue in this direction, which seems uphill all the time, not even at times, but all the time, that I'm going to stop by the end of the year. So I've even gone as far as to not necessarily partner, but become a proud supporter of Tunnel to Towers, because the majority of my focus and drive is first responder and military gear. Well, not gear, but apparel, right? Hats and t-shirts. And I evolved into that not too long ago. It's probably been about, 6 months. Because the original concept that I had was just, coming out of the world and the country's divisiveness and everybody at odds with one another. I came up with the new brand name, which was Not a Bystander. And it started out as ammo arts because I started with making clocks and adding brass shells, and basically they were ammo clocks. And then that evolved from that to making other woodcraft items. And then I'm not even sure how I transitioned into apparel, but I went all in. And I bought the silhouette machine for cutting vinyl. I bought hat presses, heat presses, or t-shirt presses. I bought a DTF printer, and now I have a white toner laser printer. It's dug really deep into my pocket. And in fact, if I were being honest, I would say that it was probably a little too deep. And I was a little bit grandiose as far as what I was going to be able to provide and the kind of work that I had planned on doing to reach my goals. So I had all this gear and I only used half of it. I ended up selling the silhouette machine and got away from vinyl cutting. I couldn't even get the hang of it. Most of my business online, at least Etsy, when I was on Etsy, was selling the clocks and sublimated tumblers, which I still do from time to time, but I haven't sold a clock in probably a year. So I'm pretty much done with that. And then I picked up on making leather patch hats, engrave them with a laser, and go out to markets and press on demand. So I buy a bunch of blank hats and I go out there and that's primary where the bread and butter is. People want a custom hat, want a custom piece of apparel. I don't do print on demand t-shirts out in the wild because that's a lot of extra equipment and it's already enough, all the things that I take with me to begin with. So where am I going with all this? I hope that I help somebody out that's struggling like me, and maybe there's some collaboration that can be done there about what are we doing well and what's not working type of thing. Because, honestly, the best source and the best resource of information and advice and recommendation comes from people like you and me. So back to my story. I moved into a hat bar process, basically, which, eventually from time to time, a business owner will want something made for them. As far as hats go, I'm trying to get away from the t-shirt thing, although I do have some materials that I need to get rid of, and I have at least 100 t-shirts that I've pre-pressed, some with my brand and others with some funny prints that I was hoping somebody would like and then walk away with. So let's talk about the t-shirts, since I do have so many left and they don't seem to sell. And I'll tell you the reason for that. Number one, what I like and what the public likes are two different things. And so when you're doing a t-shirt business, it's mostly for one-offs. If somebody asks for a custom design, sometimes you might get lucky if you have the bandwidth to be able to provide the materials and the time to make bulk orders and not outsource it to a place like Ninja Print or All Day Shirts. I currently use Printful through Shopify, but in any case, that's besides the point. What happens is if you have a whole bunch of substrates, right? You have a whole bunch of materials, blanks, and you want to get rid of them, and you say, oh, I printed all these great designs and I pressed them on, and now they're not selling. Well, like I said before, it is personal preference, and you have to understand that the public's taste is not your taste, and it's probably not a good idea unless you can latch on to a niche, but everybody's different, right? So the one-off deal is probably the best way to go, in my opinion, because in that way, somebody asks you for a specific design, you don't have to waste materials, you know exactly what you're going to use, you execute that, you press it on the shirt, and it walks out the door. But in my case, I pressed a ton of shirts, and here's a good example. I was doing a vending market for a tacos and burrito fest. And I said to myself, I'm going to find myself a good design, and I'm going to get on Canva and I'm going to knock it out, and I'm going to make a bunch of t-shirts ready to go. So then that way somebody will come and buy them at this festival. And I went ahead and I think I printed probably, 20, 25 of the same, well, a couple different styles, right? Because I need ones that spoke to the female public as well as the male public too. So I had two different versions of the shirt, but pretty much it was a funny little saying with a bear and a sombrero drinking a margarita that says, let's talk about it. And it's cute. It's cool. And it made sense for the time. But there's a couple things that go into doing that. So one of them is that you have to understand that if there's other merch that is being licensed for the event itself, might take precedence, or maybe your design just sucks, or you're not out there pushing it like you should. You can't just assume that people are going to look at it and say, hey, man, these things coexist with the event. And not only that, but it's kind of like putting a date on a t-shirt for an event. How often are you going to wear it? And eventually it'll just become something that you wear not out and about to do housework. So don't do that. Don't do what I did. So now I got to wait, and I've already had 2 years go by to where I've had these shirts, and I have not sold a single one of them at both of the events, regardless if I pushed it or not. So lesson learned. Don't think just because you're going to an event and you're making a design that makes sense for it that you're going to be able to sell that product at the event. People aren't into that sort of thing, especially if they're just there to drink. The only memory they want of it is the hangover the next day. They don't need a shirt to commemorate it. But that's my personal opinion. Maybe somebody out there who's listening to this and can identify with what I had done, it had better luck, right? And I hope you did. So now I'm stuck with a bunch of Margarita Fest style shirts, even though they don't say any of that or imply any of that, that are hard to get rid of. So probably over the next couple of events that I do, I'm going to end up having to sell them at a much lower price, and at least break even. Right? Like I said, lesson learned. So, and then the rest of my t-shirts, kind of the same idea. So I'm trying to push a brand. I'm trying to get a brand off of the ground, and going back to the whole ammo arts and transitioning to not a bystander. Ammo arts made sense at the time for the things that I was making. And then it turned into not a bystander because I really wanted to push the mission and kind of my agenda to say, hey, we're all one people, one fight. And we don't need to be fighting amongst each other. We need to be helping each other out. And my mission statement kind of went with that, to the idea that, hey, nobody should be a bystander. Everybody should be stepping up for everybody and helping each other out. And I made my logo to symbolize that, people helping each other up a mountain. And it was fine. I mean, I understood it. And what happened was, and what continues to happen is, my brand name is not a bystander and a DA bystander. And if you look at it literally, you're probably trying to figure out, well, what's nada mean? Is it the Spanish name nothing? People understand the word bystander, but the combination of the two, it just kind of goes over folks' heads. It's very few and far between somebody gets it right away. Obviously, I'm not even sure what the name of the idea is when you can make a word sound like a phrase, but there's a reason for it's being not a bystander. And for me, it's like two things. I mean, my last name is Garcia, my Hispanic heritage, and nada means nothing in Spanish, not a bystander, kind of almost the same thing. You're, nothing, no bystander type of thing, but at the same time is not a bystander, right? So I've had to explain that over and over again. And I think that's a marketing problem on my part, but everything doesn't need to add up to the customer. So I don't really dwell on that. But I did make a bunch of t-shirts that I was trying to push with my brand logo on there, with different types of designs on the back. And then, of course, my logo on the pocket area, the chest, kind of like a Vans or a Grunt style or something like that. A big apparel company, standard t-shirt format. And, everybody's got to start somewhere. So I took my inspiration from those brands, and I even did some research about, how they got started, how their brand come about, and then the history of that. And so I wanted that kind of legacy for my brand. So I did everything I could in the beginning to push it like that. I wasn't really focused on marketing. I just kind of threw my name out there and hope somebody would catch on and put it on some t-shirts and made some hat patches before I really got into making until I really got into making hat patches. So that was slow going. I created an LLC. I went through Taylor Brands in order to make it happen. And the process was definitely easy, but outside of that, the work that you have to do yourself in order to get stuff going is quite an undertaking. So I had an Etsy page, I had an Etsy shop, and I was doing well, especially when I was just doing clocks and some other woodwork. And then when I started doing tumblers, all the tumblers that I sold were the Lysol hater spray wrap for the NFL teams. And that wasn't the way to go because it's considered licensing. And, between the Lysol label and the actual logos of those teams, it will get you blacklisted. And so they'll flag you a couple times and give you some warnings. And you say, oh, okay, they gave me a warning. I'll go ahead and I'll chill for a while and then I'll knock them back out. Everybody else is doing it. Why am I getting in trouble for it? Well, that's not the way I should have looked at it. What I should have done was, hey, you know what? This time has come where it's over. I'm going to pull all the listings. Maybe I'll put something out there telling the folks that are familiar with my shop that, hey, I'm not going to be able to post these online, but if you want one, definitely reach out and I'll hook you up and still continue to make money by selling those on the side, yet not get in trouble for doing it on a large platform like Etsy. I was not smart enough to understand that at the time. All I cared about was making money. It's not like I was even making it hand over foot. I was just making more than I was usually. I mean, this is a side thing. And finances and understanding all of that is probably a complete another podcast that I could do, but there's definitely some ins and outs, and there's some things that I still to this day probably need to do a better job of as far as accounting and tracking and understand what my overhead is versus inventory and revenue, because they say it usually takes you a couple of years for a brand to start making some money back because of all the money you have to invest, right? So your ROI doesn't come till later, but that's besides the point. Continuing on, I got banned, and Etsy was my primary revenue stream as far as my side hustle business went. And I didn't have to worry about nothing with Etsy. They took care of everything. And even at the end of the year, they would give you whatever you needed for your taxes, not to mention that they remit the taxes for you as well. But yeah, and they advertise for you. I mean, you spend a little bit extra to do some advertising, but the fact that everybody is familiar with Etsy and Etsy's so popular, it's easy. It's easy. They do most of the work for you. And, if I get back on Etsy and start selling again, I think my view of continuing with this process would be extremely different than it is right now, because now I had to move into Shopify, and Shopify, you have to do everything yourself. You've got to build your website. It's not like a click of a button. Etsy, you can upload some stuff and here and there, and they'll do the rest for you for the most part. I mean, it's kind of automated. Shopify, it's not hard, but I would say the user interface with Shopify is great. I mean, if you're going to add a product, they give you all the steps basically right there in the page when you're adding the product to put it in there, to put the media in there, to put the tags and all that kind of stuff, which is another thing you have to understand. What kind of things are you going to put into this product or into this listing that's going to drive people to your shop? And on top of that, you have to create your own webpage. Now they give you one, and there's different styles that you can get for free, free templates, but you are doing all of the work. And if you've never done a website before, it is tedious, and just understanding what you have to put into it and what format works the best is it requires a lot of research. And it doesn't matter how many YouTube videos you watch or how much you ask ChatGPT, which I never did because I know ChatGPT wasn't even around when I was doing it. But through the Taylor Brands, when I got my LLC, it was the whole package. And that was part of it originally, was just my own website. So I had a domain, and that was before I moved to Shopify. And I tried to set that up on my own, and that was good grief. Never again. Never again. I'm hiring somebody, but I ain't got that kind of money. So that's probably never going to happen. So back to Shopify, they do have the tools and the resources needed. And now they even have a little AI companion that you can ask any question anytime, and it's probably going to direct you to the right place and have a hyperlink to get you there in order to be successful. So Shopify is not bad. All in all, adding listings and building the website through their templates is great. The problem is you got to get people there. You can build and add product and do all you want, manage your web page, put blog posts on there. You could have the best web page out there for your online shop and never get one foot in the door. So then comes marketing. So what do? Because Shopify doesn't offer it. Well, you're on your own. I mean, unless you have somebody, there's different versions of the Shopify stores that you can get, the memberships that you can get. And if you don't want to spend $300, $400 a month having somebody do most of the work for you, then you're going to do it yourself. And I absolutely do not want to spend that type of money. I'm not even making that type of money. There's no way. I've already spent so much money getting to this point that I can't do it anymore. So now what? Well, luckily I got kids who are that age, who are all over social media. In fact, one of them is on there and posts just photographs and videos of his car and has thousands of followers and gets 100,000 views and this and that. But me, I post something for the masses, and not even for a focused group of people like him. He's out there. Mustang lovers or car lovers, those two type of people are out there watching his videos, and probably his age group too. But for me, it's what I do as far as selling hats and t-shirts for first responders. Sure, there is a focused group there, but it's huge. It's a large group. There's firefighters, there's EMS and paramedics, EMTs, air lifeline EMTs, dispatchers, 911 dispatchers, which don't get any love, right? EMS, I think the same thing. Firefighters and law enforcement get most of the love. So yeah, so law enforcement's in there, and military, because I'm retired military. So I'm like, yeah, let's, first responder, military as well. We'll put them all together. We'll make t-shirts and hats to represent them. Built out my own designs that make sense, silhouettes of all of these different types of services standing next to my brand name. And then, of course, like I said, I partner with Tunnel to Towers, to become a proud supporter, and got a campaign page and all that. I got a way to donate, because I was hoping that, hey, there's a couple ways we can approach this. And I've definitely always been a kind of a philanthropist type of person. And it started when I was younger in the military, building houses for Habitat for Humanity, getting the whole command, hundreds of people out there taking turns throughout a regular work day, because the commanding officer would allow us to do that. And in 3 months, we built 3 brand new houses for less fortunate folks. And, that went so well, and I enjoyed myself so much that I said, you know what, I'm going to continue to do that. So giving back has always been my thing. And I felt like I could do this twofold, right? So get my brand out there, support those first responders and those military guys and gals that are doing those hard jobs that get looked at sideways these times, especially law enforcement with everything that's going on. And the people that support them. This apparel isn't just for the guys and gals that are out there doing the job. It's for the people that love them, that support them, that are friends with them, that want to say, hey, look at me. I know somebody. that's doing these things and I want to support them. It's a culmination of many things. And so I'm on the socials and I'm putting all that out there, and I'm pinning posts and I'm pinning comments and I'm putting so much information out there. When I have a new product that I want to drop, it's going on the socials. I'm making videos. Now I'm doing podcasts. And granted, up until right now, I never did a podcast about my business. Have some commentary back and forth about, hey man, I know the position you're in. I've been there, or I am there. And I'm thinking about going there, and I want to know, hey, is there a way? And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to bash any of these things that I've been talking about, starting a business and having a side hustle, doing open air markets and getting your name out there if you want to establish your brand, but have a goal. I think about when I get a little upset when I see that I've been putting out this content and nobody's looking at it. Even friends and family on the social medias, they see my stuff, but they don't even comment on it. I've got maybe 3 or 4 people who are consistently always sharing my posts or always liking my posts. Of course, my awesome wife, right? Biggest cheerleader, and a couple of friends of ours. But that's it. And I just think that maybe social media is probably not the way to go either, because, I don't get on there to scroll and like and love and watch every single thing that I'm scrolling on. Not to mention the fact that 90% of the content that I'm scrolling through anyway has nothing to do with my friends or my family. I rarely see them posting. And I don't know if it's because they're not posting or because the algorithm is jacked up and all they're going to show me is things they think I'm going to like and some sponsored stuff and a bunch of advertisements. Facebook, if you're listening, Instagram, if you're listening, make a separate platform, make a separate app for that. And let's get back to what these social media apps were intended for, was to stay connected, to stay in touch. I don't want to see the news. I don't want to see a million different types of things because I clicked on something. I want to see what my friends are doing. I want to see what my family's up to. It just doesn't make sense. So, but I don't want to go off on a tangent. So going back to this business thing and just having enough patience and tolerance to push through it, push through the hard days. And when you're putting your heart and your soul into it and you don't feel like there's any return, you got to ask yourself, what were you doing it for to begin with? Now, I definitely started the brand for a reason. And, of course, I'd want to make money. I would love to have a legacy to leave my kids. I would love to put my stamp on life, so to speak, and be able to retire one day and not have to worry about anything. Now, money isn't everything, because I know that when I'm out in the wild doing my open air markets and I'm vending on, and I'm enjoying these events that I'm at and the people, I'm not even counting. Like, I don't even care. I'm out there. I'm enjoying the moment. I'm enjoying the people, the interaction. I definitely like to be able to make people happy. Customer service was one of the biggest things that I would always tout about as far as my work goes, because there's been times where I've sent something in the mail and it's broke when it got there, and I don't even bat an eye. Like, it doesn't even bother me. Yeah, is it going to cost me a little extra money to rebuild it, extra time to resend it, all that? Sure. But at the end of the day, when somebody calls me or somebody leaves a review and they say, hey man, this was an amazing experience, what a great product, they did this, that, and the other for me, then that's rewarding in itself. But I'm not going to lie, I'm a human being and I want what I wanted to establish this for. And that was to bring awareness, right? To make sure that folks out there understood that first responders and military just don't get the kind of support that they used to get. I don't know what it takes anymore. People used to say, oh yeah, I grew up in the yellow ribbon days, right? I joined the military right before 9/11 happened. The Persian Gulf, Gulf War happened before that, Desert Storm. And then I joined a little bit later on, and then the towers went down, and it was just one thing after another, global war on terror. But everybody loved the military, and everybody supported them. And think about this, the lives that were lost, and the services that those lives were lost from, fire department in New York City, and the police officers. And think about the 911 dispatchers that were taking calls that day. I couldn't even imagine being an EMT or an EMS or anything like that. Those services, I mean, God bless them, right? They see the worst of it too, but they're steadfast. They don't stop. They they don't quit. There's no quit in them. There's no quit in the folks that are in the military, and they don't think about who they're doing it for. They're not doing it for accolades. They're not doing it for awards. They're not even doing it for thanks, but I feel like they need one. And I feel like not a bystander and supporting those who do those jobs, and combining that with creating these campaigns for Tunnel to Towers to eradicate veteran homelessness and give mortgage-free homes to severely injured and traumatized first responders and their families, and military members and their families. That's an amazing mission. And I want to be side by side with that ideal. And that's why not a bystander is not a bystander. But up to this point, it's been tough. And I think that I stay strong through this, the struggle of not being able to get known and to get my name out there, and for people to recognize what this brand means. It's more than just hats and t-shirts. It's about people. It's about the lives we live right next to each other and we can't even get along. It's about being able to have that patience and understanding that we once did, and being friendlier, that small town feel in a large town. We had that at one time, and it shouldn't take an act of war or a tragedy like the Oklahoma City bombing or all of these things that we have had to endure over the decades for us to come together as people, and not just on a small town level or a city level, or a state level, or even through the country. I'm talking globally. And maybe when I was younger and wasn't really paying much mind, and we didn't get to see it in our faces 24/7 with social media and these news stations that run 24 hours, but there was a happier time. And at the risk of sounding like an 80-year-old man, times were different back then. And maybe ignorance is bliss, but not knowing 90% of what we know now, I think allowed that to happen. And there is such thing as too much information. And I think it has ruined us. And so apparently I got a lot to get out today, but I need to get back to this, not a bystander, because it's super important to me, the success of it. And I was hoping my kids would latch on and be a part of it too, but they're living their own lives. And I think that's the other part too for me that makes it tough, because I thought it was going to be something that we were going to be able to do as a family, especially since they all moved home. They're all adults and they're all here. And I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe I should try to get them involved. And maybe part of that's because of me. Maybe I don't want to relinquish some of the control that I have of the things that I do, because I'm worried they're not going to be able to do it like me. But on the other hand, part of that is also because they just don't have time for it. They are living their own lives. They're adults. And I can't expect them to want to jump into something that I'm both feet in on. They have their lives to live. They got families of their own, and they've got things to deal with that this would take up too much time for them. So, and that's the other part of it too. You can't get burnt out on it. thought that, hey, I'm only going to do so many events a year. Last year, we were out there a lot. I was probably doing like 3 events a month. It was summertime when we were doing the most, obviously, because it's busier. But it's awful because in Florida, I mean, that heat and humidity, you can't get away from it. It is miserable. And I have done several where I've just, no matter how much water I drink, I'm still coming home curled up in a ball, dehydrated, feeling sick. And so that's part of it, is just understanding what your limitations are. And so, like this year, if I'm not doing an indoor event during the summer, I ain't doing it. And we're almost at that point already. I'm going to have to say no to some of these great areas that want me to come continue to vent at their market. I just can't continue to do it like that. I've learned my lesson. I don't want to get burned out. As it is, I only do 2 events a month. So I'm trying to make it so I'm only doing every other week. Sometimes I'll make an exception if I'm going to do a large event that's like a 2-day or a 3-day that I spent a lot of money for to get into, hoping that I can make some of that money back and then some. But there are events like that out there. They're definitely worth it. And you definitely want to find events if you're going out there and you're doing outdoor markets that want to have you consistently, because you create a fan base, you create customers that are regulars and folks that are going to bring you more business from their friends. So that's definitely helpful. I think that vending at farmers markets, outdoor events, that's the best thing you can do, really. Especially in the position that I'm in where I can't seem to get this off the ground. It's definitely helpful. It makes me feel better at the end of the day when I go and I'm able to go out there and I'm able to make stuff for people, because that's truly what it's all about. Making something for somebody and they walk away happy with the product that you put your heart and soul into, I think is the best reward. It has nothing to do with, at the end of the day, how much money you made. It has to do with the impact that you made, and maybe the friends that you made and the networking that you were able to do, because one day that's going to come around, and that'll be the return on the investment. So the investment is people. The investment is your time into people. If you're online and you're spending every waking moment outside of your normal job and out there doing your side hustle, if you're out there doing events and you continue to try to push an online presence, that's work in itself. And I literally have to tell myself, you need to stop. You need to have a seat, watch some TV. I used to have a no shit stopping point every single day when I was busy, when I was actually making money and I had more customers, where I'd say, okay, listen, I'm not doing anything on Sundays. Like on a Saturday, I'm going to treat it like a regular work day. I'll work until like 3 or 4 and then I'm done. But I would come home from my job that I had prior to the one I'm in now, and I would do work, and I'd work until like 8 o'clock at night, and I'd have a couple hours to sit and relax and then go to sleep and go back to work the next day and start it all over again. But I had a schedule, and so I wouldn't get burned out. And so I think that's important. But to wrap it up, I rant, if it all makes sense to anybody. I've probably left out quite a bit of details that I could probably go back to later on. But if this helped you and you have some further questions about some things that I said that I didn't elaborate on, feel free to send me a message, comment, whatever. However I get this message out to people, my whole intent is a little bit of catharsis, but also I want to help people. And if at any time or any point in this conversation turned into something that you heard, that you latched onto, that you can relate to, then feel free to reach out. So in the meantime, I hope you find your niche. I hope you find your brand. And I hope you find the people that love both. Hey, thanks for showing up today. And for any of us that are out there caring more than we like to say out loud, let's keep the conversation going on the next episode.